What's up, guys? HOTSHOTFRONTIER back at it again with another video, and in this video, guys, we're gonna be doing a budget tier list post Maze of Millennia. So if you guys have not seen my budget videos before, I'll take a deck and see how budget friendly it can be, plus how slightly competitive it can be as well. And of course, we do not like 500 plus decks because not everyone can afford those, and you can still pick one of these decks and do very well with it, of course. So we have our categories: top budget, let him cook, could win locals, experienced pilot, and of course it's budget bud. So guys, before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell on so you're updated the moment I upload new videos. But getting right into it, guys, we have Dark Worlds, a deck that did get support post Maze of Millennia. Now I'm actually going to place them at experienced pilot. I feel like right now it's not the current format for it to pop off. I always say this, but with Droll being rampant right now in the format, with a lot of cards like Bonfire in the format, it's going to be hard for Dark World to even really compete in terms of getting that first place, regional placement. And the thing with Dark World is they want to discard, they want to do so much, and Droll just says no to them, unfortunately. Now, if we talk about it with a budget standpoint, the deck is insanely cheap. Personally, guys, I think the new support is actually really good for Dark Worlds. I just think that currently, with the format how it is, we might have to wait a little longer for this deck to see more representation on the top tables. Going on to our next pick here, we have, of course, Sword Soul. And Sword Soul is a deck that I will actually say could win locals. Now, the deck has had a lot of trouble in the past with something like Nibiru and, just getting hand trapped to death. But personally, I think adding the right amount of cards in adding cards like Crossbow Designator helps the deck a lot. Plus, the deck is insanely budget, and it's one of those decks honestly have stayed in the format for one of the longest time in terms of meta. So it's personally a really good strategy in terms of being a synchro-based strategy, and for what it does, it's not bad. You can definitely get the deck for under $100 and still do very well at a locals, or even a regional level. You might do pretty good at it. So honestly, it's a good deck. It's a great deck actually to start off with if you are a beginner as well. Keep that in mind. Going on to Marine Cess, it's a deck that definitely is one of the top budget decks. Now, in terms of how much it costs to build Marine Cess, insanely cheap. Really, the higher amount of cards or the hand traps you play in here, because you can play a huge amount of hand traps in here, and they can constantly keep cycling out through what you think is the best way to actually verse the meta with. So personally, overall, it's just such a great strategy, and I don't see this like leaving the top budget tier, because I always place this here. It definitely deserves that spot. Going on to Trap Tricks, a deck that I will actually say let him cook in the kitchen, let him stir that pot. But Trap Tricks for a trap-based structure deck is insane. Now, for me, Labyrinth is a better trap deck, but I think Trap Tricks is like right underneath it. My friend has been kicking my butt, honestly, with the structure deck, and it's just, the more I verse him, it's just, I can't understand why this is not seeing more play. With just 3 structure decks, you can do so much. I think even at a locals level, even like now, you can still do very well at it. So honestly, I would not give up on this deck. It's a very good strategy. Next up, guys, we have Vanadium. And Vanadium is a deck that is a little controversial to be on this list. I'm going to put it at let him cook. Reason being is that this deck is actually insanely strong. Now, it cannot be at top budget because it is like budget-ish, and it's not budget, but so the reason I put this on this list is that I feel like the main expensive cards are the extra deck. You don't have to play Chaos Angel. You don't have to play Little Knight, 1 or 2 copies of it. You can actually go the Hot Red Calamity way and save on a lot of money. Now, if you go into the main deck, the Vanadium monsters themselves are actually insanely cheap. The only real expensive cards are the Field Spell Galarium, about $20-ish, and it's getting reprinted in the Rarity Collection too. So that way you're actually saving a lot of money, and the deck is much, much cheaper than you think it would be. But let me know what you guys think as well. Should it even be on this list? I feel like it should at let him cook, let him stir that pot, you know what I mean? So let's go on to our next one. We have the Volcanic FTK, really, right? And you can mix this with the runic stuff as well. So I'm actually going to put this at could win locals, because honestly, I think it could win locals. I don't think it's where it's budget, but it's like, it's not worth playing. Definitely is a deck that is interesting. And I mean, come on, Volcanics in 2024, who doesn't want to see that? That's great, right? Finally, they got reprinted. Now we have Salamangreat, and Salamangreat, honestly, at this point, is an experienced pilot deck. So a lot of the cards are insanely cheap, like you guys know. Salamangreat of Fire is about a $15, $17 card. It's not too bad, you know, where it used to be, it was like a $30, $40 card. So luckily that went down. And you don't have to play the bonfires, you don't have to, and you still have a really budget deck, and it's very highly competitive as well. But I think at this point, Salamangreat is a strategy where a certain player needs to play this. Like, I'm only a Salamangreat player, like I just dedicate to the combos, I got this. Because it's just too much of a, too many different lines to go into, and you kind of have to know when you're going for game as well. So it's a little complicated, but Salamangreat is a very fun and competitive deck. Going on to TGs, it's budget, but so I think even with all the new TG support, it's just, and it is like not too bad in terms of budget, but compared to everything else on this list, I think it's just, it's not there. This is not it. Going on to the new Earthbound monsters, I'm actually gonna put this at Let Him Cook. So if you guys don't know, like Earthbound did get new support, and it's actually really cool because you can actually go ahead and fusion summon and synchro summon at the same time pretty much, and it's kind of cool to see. Now you can mix this with the runic engine as well, and you have a pretty decent deck, and both are really cheap too. Like these cards themselves are all like supers and rares. The only card you really need at 3 of is the spell, the harmonic card, which is about an $8-9 card, which is not too bad. So overall, it's a great strategy, and it's a newer strategy too, so it's great to see in the format. Next up, guys, we have our Black Wings, and you guys already know it's a top budget deck. Come on, Birds, best deck ever, let's go. But seriously though, guys, there's so many different variants you can play. You can go the Kali Yuga route. I did a video, several videos on if you want to do the Calamity Lock with Black Wings, really cool. And you can try to just burn your opponent to death. So there are a lot of different variants of the deck you can play, and the deck itself is insanely cheap. And cards got reprinted too to make it even cheaper. Honestly, you can't even ask much in terms of the 2024, like Pro would be so proud. Seriously, if his cards being so cheap, accessible. But going on to the next one, guys, we have Dinos, and I'm gonna put it at Let Him Cook. The reason being is that Dinos are insane, don't get me wrong. Now, some of the cards are slightly expensive in terms of the spells that they do play, the Ground Zeno. They're getting up in price a little bit, but overall, the cards that it did get from Maze of Millennia are really good for the strategy. Now we just need Misk back to 3. I don't know which Konami employee is listening, but you heard me. Bring it back to 3, okay? Next ban list. All right. But moving on, though, we do have Sharks, and Sharks did also get support. It's a deck that I think, honestly, you let him cook in the kitchen, and he's going to come up with something amazing. Because the card it got, I think it was Armored XYZ. It's not the best card, but it's a good stepping stone for what the deck wants to do. So honestly, it's not too bad. We're going to see what happens this format with the deck, and it might be a top budget deck. And honestly though, it's pretty budget. Like Sharks are really budget. Next up, guys, with it being the year of Fire, we have Fire Kings, and Fire Kings are honestly a top budget strategy. So this deck is amazing because you can go ahead and mix this with a lot of different variants. You have the Tri Brigade, you have Dogmatica, you have the simple spoil stuff, you have Snake Eyes, you of course have support cards like Bonfire. There's so many different ways you can play this deck, and it's okay if you just want to stick to 3 structure decks for $30. That's not bad, right? Or I guess maybe $36 where you get it. So that's pretty good for a top budget deck, if you ask me. And it's the year of Fire, come on. So going on to Makonko. Makonko is a deck that could win locals. Now, the deck did slightly get hit in terms of the Link 2, but there's so many different ways you can play with Makonko as well, so I wouldn't count them out, and they are insanely cheap. They're not that bad. You know, some of the spells are a little bit high in terms of like it being money, but for what the deck does, and it takes a lot of people off guard when you first them too, so definitely a deck that's worth it to play as well. Going on to Mementos, a really cool deck that came out not too long ago in Valiant Smashers. I would actually put this deck at could win locals. It is an interesting deck, and it is getting new support, and I believe Phantom Nightmare that will kind of increase the consistency of the deck, and we'll see a little bit more from the deck then. Going on to the, of course, Flame Swordsman support that also came out of Maze of Millennia, and I'm going to actually put this at Experienced Pilot for now. Now, you could mix this with something like Infernoble, and that's actually an interesting thought too, because Infernoble has slowly left the format, and kind of combining with the Flame Swordsman support kind of gives it, new life. It breathes new life in the format. So we're curious to see kind of where that takes it. But overall, it's not as bad as other people thought it was. It's actually pretty interesting support. So I can't wait to see where this goes. Going on to Dynamorphias. So Dynamorphias, I'm going to put them at could win locals for sure. The deck is still insanely cheap. Getting that those Megaton reprints, making them even cheaper as well. You probably built the deck for, honestly, under like $25. And that's crazy for a trap-based deck too. That's really cool to see. It's a very interesting strategy to keep halving your life points the more you have. You want to go as low as you possibly can so you can dominate your opponent. It's really cool to see. Next up, guys, we have our heroes. And heroes, I'm going to put at could win locals. I mean, they definitely can win locals because they got a top 8 regional spot. That's crazy. Honestly, it's amazing because it's a deck that has just so much nostalgic support, from the era of GX. So it's great to see when this deck does well. It just brings great vibes all over. So I cannot wait to see this get first place at a regional or even a YCS level event. Going on to Goaty. Goaty for right now, I feel like it definitely could win locals. Probably better at Experienced Pilot for now because the deck is getting new support too. I think like Phantom Nightmare, and that new support is actually really good. It kind of bought out a few of the Goaty cards. So we'll see what happens with Goaty, but overall the deck is really cool to see. It's a nice synchro based strategy. So I'm going to place Gold Pride Punk actually at Experienced Pilot. Now the deck has not seen too much play currently, but there are talks that this deck will make a huge splash back into the meta, and I can't wait for that to happen. So definitely keep your eyes on this strategy because it is insanely cheap with the Gold Pride engine and the Punk engine. Going on to Unchained, I'm actually going to put Unchained at Let Him Cook. So of course you guys know this deck is not as popular as it used to be, but it is still a really good deck even with the Shivaha at 1. You have a lot of inexpensive cards in this deck. The Yama, the Link 2, is about $5-ish, and it's a deck that honestly, if you're trying to learn a link-based strategy, I would definitely recommend. The main deck is insanely cheap. Now you could play cards like Triple Tactic Thrust, which will of course thrust the price up, but other than that, really cheap and worth trying out if you haven't already. Going on to Rescue Ace, a deck that honestly I would never have thought of putting on a budget tier list, but thanks to Maze of Millennia, we got reprints for these cards, and you could just play pure Rescue Ace, and that's not bad, honestly. I'm actually gonna put this at could win locals because Let Him Cook, I mean, you could add Sinful Spoil stuff with it later down the line, but with how the deck is currently, actually, I will put it at Let Him Cook because you definitely could build this deck for under $100, and that's kind of crazy. If we went back a few months ago, that definitely wouldn't be the case. Later down the line, if you want to add the Sinful Spoil stuff in, bonfires, all that, go right ahead. But at the current moment, this is a great strategy to 100% play. You have Crystal Beast, and I'm sorry to all the Crystal Beast players, but I'm putting it at its budget, but I just don't see a huge improvement with the deck. We're not seeing more better Crystal Beast support. In terms of, I always hear they'll get you can play these trap cards, you can play Necro Valley, stuff like that. You could play that stuff, but I think with this archetype, it really needs Crystal Beast support, a lot more Crystal Beast support. But of course, let me know down below what you guys think. Of course, can the deck get better? Let me know. Going on to Sprite. Sprite, I will actually put a Let Him Cook. A lot of different versions of Sprite you can play. Runic Sprite, For Hire Runic Sprite, Tri-Brigade Sprite, Evil Twin Sprite, so many different versions. I think the deck does not, lose favor in that. And the Sprite core itself is insanely cheap. The starters used to be a lot, much more expensive. The blues, of course, used to be really expensive, but over time, things have gone down. They've gotten reprinted. So it's great to see with Sprite because it's such a fun, having just so many Link 2s on the field. And it's a great deck. It honestly is a great deck and fun deck to play. Next up, guys, is Rika Sun Avalon. And I'm actually going to place Rika Sun Avalon at Let Him Cook. So I'm curious to see what this new format will have for Rikas. We're fresh off of a ban list, and of course you guys know the ban list made the Link 1s go to 1, unfortunately, but the deck was insane before, and even after, I think the deck can still do very well. Plus with the hits, of course, a lot of people have left the deck, and that being said, a lot of the cards are cheaper, which is great for the player base. So I'm curious to see where someone can really take this deck, this format. Next up is Runic, and Runic being all variants of Runic, I guess you would say. I'm actually put it at like top budget because there's just so many different ways you could play with Runic, and it's insanely cheap still off of the Megatins, off of the latest Megatins. So the of course Runic engine you could probably get under about, I would say comfortably, like, yeah, 40 bucks, mostly 40 bucks. Now if you're playing Sleipnirs, might be more over, like a little bit over 50, but overall that's really good for an engine that is very viable this format. Going on to Weather Painters, gonna have to place that at its budget, but you don't see much of Weather Painters, and unfortunately there are a lot of better decks that can run D-Shifter because they do so much more. And speaking of that, with Exo Sisters, and Exo Sisters are a deck that I'm going to put at Let Him Cook, and it's great because this deck runs D-Shifter. It's a really good rank 4 deck, and I've seen countless videos of people just not really understanding what Exo Sisters do. And shout out to Budget YGO, because he's been doing a series where he actually goes ahead and goes to locals with Exo Sisters on a budget, and he's been killing it lately. So shout out to him. But anyway, guys, seriously, Exo Sisters, I've always said, is a great strategy, and it's something that you should at least try. Just like I said with other strategies, it's a great XYZ strategy that is perfect for beginners, and it's insanely cheap. Going on to our last deck on the list, guys, we have Little Wonderies, and of course, it's a top budget strategy. I don't see this dropping anytime soon. Honestly, it's insane how great of a floodgate it is. Plus, I mean, even if they hit it, which they have hit them, yeah, they're still well. So if you guys liked the video, make sure to give it a huge like, comment down below, guys, if you liked our picks here, and of course, what did we miss? If you guys are not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you're updated the moment I upload new videos. But guys, that's it for me. Hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.